MacNeil, author of the Wine Bible, and welcome to the back label. You know, I was looking in my wallet the other day to see if I had an old one, but I think I threw it away. I'm talking about one of those crumpled old vintage charts. Remember those? Do vintages really matter? You know, I don't think they do, at least not in the way they used to. Consider the reason for a vintage to begin with. Vintages were put on wine bottles to give you a date to count from, so you knew how old a wine bottle was. And then maybe a little bit because it was fun to know the year in order to relive a moment, a second in time that took place in 1960 or 1980 or whatever. But most vintages simply had to be accepted for what they were. Some were poor, some were good, and most were in the vast in between. But the word good is an interesting one for us, right? Because when someone says to me, is this a good vintage? I always say, good for what? Good for oysters? Good for steak? Good for a formal dinner party? Good for sex? Good for what matters? There's another problem though, and that's that, you know, the media characterizes a vintage just once in the spring after the harvest, but there are countless examples of wine changing over time. So what good is memorizing a vintage assessment when the wine in fact changes? In the end, I think of I think of vintage as the mood of the wine. It's to me like a person, and if you like a person, you like them in many different moods. So when I like a wine, I like it when it's elegant and refined and quiet. And I also like it when it's kind of extroverted and bolder and rich. To me, the mood of a wine is what counts, and it tells you a lot more than a crumpled old vintage chart. If you have a view on vintage, leave me a comment.